Yo, it's your boy Agent Albatross here again with the Cypher Unlimited crew here for another GM Roulette recap, and this time we got supers. Anthony?
Supers it was. Wow. And I don't know if it was as heroic or super as we thought it would be, but it was still a lot of fun. So the order of trouble, we're going to start it off with Anthony today. And just for everybody's information, once again, GM Roulette, improvisational gaming at its best. Anthony?
What's up, guys? First and foremost, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to those that we missed. I know this video was a little late. We had some technical difficulties last week, but we're happy to give it to you now. And, our usual suspects, me, Spigs, Anthony, Al, H, and Albatross, Alpha Dean, and our special golden one, Steven.
Hey, guys. Merry Christmas.
I went first again. I was a little... I like going first, but I was a little disappointed. I wanted to get a different shot in the pecking order per se, but going first isn't so bad. And like I said in the last video, it allowed me to make some changes. Good, bad, or different. The last time I ran before, when we had Candyland and we had Fairy Tale, I spent my entire session building a narrative and didn't have any, action or any die rolls or anything like that. So my mindset going first this time around was I was thinking, well, I'm going to try to get involved in the action as quick as possible. And since it was supers, that actually helped because, with supers, you want combats, you want action. So I came up with the concept of big bad, like every good villain needs a doctorate. So I came up with Dr. Destroyer. I came up with the concept of instead of playing superheroes, we were playing lackeys to a supervillain, which I thought was an interesting take. And then I needed to add a on-the-ground villain, someone that's going to be able to interact with the characters. So I came up with Maggot, which your guys proceeded to destroy her. But I thought she was a cool and interesting character. I liked the dynamic Maggot had with the group, especially the hatred between Maggot and Bennett that got built organically during the course of the story. I thought was pretty cool. But all in all, I thought it was pretty successful. We told a pretty decent story. I don't necessarily think it was better than the Fairy Tale version that we ran the first time, but I'll discuss my points on why later on in this video, but overall, I think it was pretty successful. Running first, I had the same mindset that, hey, I'm going first. I got to build at least a base of a story before I hand off the baton to Steven, to at least give him something to work off. And I think I did. We had the bank scene. We had the guard scene, the dogs, Dean, with fighting the dogs, and we had Crazy Driver doing his crazy nonsense.
Crazy Rider.
I'm sorry, Crazy Rider. Yeah. All in all, I think I did okay. I can't complain. Steven, you were second up.
Yes, I was second up. But that was the thing. I played Moira Bennett first. So I got to play her in the beginning. But people seem to latch on to the her hatred of Maggot there in the beginning, just because I figured everyone else had the dog's handle. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to try and it sort of fed into my session when I was like, you know what? Moira wants to try and just defame her boss, Maggot, just because Maggot was so mean to everybody. She was like evil Ant-Man, really. That's how I was imagining her. Changing size, named Maggot instead of Ant. And so when it came to mind, I was like, well, I got to make sure she just doesn't get trapped in the vault there as she stole from everybody. I was thinking, you know what? One way to get everybody was she could control flies as opposed to ants. And it just seemed like almost it just was a slope of, okay, we're going to cut, it's like a satire on actual superheroes out there. And that's what I was thinking was I wanted to give people a chance to, with villains, you can get really, really dark really, really quick if you choose to. And I was like, you know what? I want to see if I can bring something a little bit lighter, a little bit more that people can interact with in a different way, and that's why I brought in the reporter who everybody thought was an FBI agent at first. The guy writing one of his like first 1, 2, or 3 articles for Villains Elite magazine, who heard about the heist job from somewhere. Who knows? He's got contacts everywhere. It could have been Dr. Destroyer or Maggot called him just to try and tie the I don't want to call us the heroes, tie the scapegoats up for a while as they got chased out. But yeah, I mean, we had a lot more action in this one, a lot more die rolls, but that's sort of the super genre anyway, because you read any comic book, it's all about the action. Not that there aren't those that have great stories along with it, but it is about the action that it comes to. It's the over-the-top stuff, and over-the-top usually requires a lot of rolls. So I went right into the car chase, and honestly, I didn't realize how much time that was taking. But I look back, like I did have a bank section, so it wasn't all car chase. but it that sort of inspired me, like with Maggot being like Ant-Man. I was like, you know what, I need to have some sort of Iron Man kind of character come out of it. And I forget if I had another villain or not, or if it was just cops that you guys were tossing off to the sky and blowing cars.
Just a bunch of cops, and that Iron Man character ended up being my character's brother.
But yeah, but I think before I hand that off, because that was great when I forget who spent the XP. I think it might have been Anthony to make him your brother. But one thing that a lot of people don't understand is that GM intrusion does not have to be a bad thing all the time. And I forget who threw the cipher at the cops.
Oh, that was me.
That was you. It was a perfect cipher for it, but you roll a natural 1.
And then I tried to re-roll it and got a 3 because I was using that big dice.
So that's why I had to go down there, and I made the scene more exciting by, you know what? It rolls under a cop car, ignites his gas tank, and like Blues Brothers, it explodes. There's flames and raining hell everywhere. But in the end, we saw that this Iron Man character, the malfunctioning suit, was Dean's brother, and I'll hand it over to him.
Well, actually,
I was third.
I'm sorry, the Al. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So when I got handed the scene again, I was third in the order, and it was basically the end of the car chase, and we were hiding, or the characters were hiding out from the police, making sure that they were concealed and not actively being tracked, and I had again they successfully hid, and I had them see the cars driving off to one side of the street there, but I kept I forget the Iron Man guy's name, but Quinn's brother, I forgot how to pronounce his name. I kept him on the street just to have that element of maybe they'll try to talk to him or whatever have you, but Dean had the wonderful idea of trying to shoot him instead of trying to talk to him or anything like that. So that's where I use a GM intrusion to try to keep the game from not going too far off the rails where they're having to deal with a murder of this person. So unlike Steven's GM intrusion that kind of added a really cool element or whatever have you to the story that helped us progress, I kind of had to cut off that route. And I gave the GM intrusion that he just the rest of his suit came together and he flew off, just to try to avoid that kind of sidetracking of having to kill him and then probably investigate his body or whatever have you. Because I personally felt like that would have kind of detracted a little too much from the main story of going into the the sewers and seeing Maggot's lair and whatever have you.
I just want to interject. That wasn't just murder. That was like heinous public execution.
Yeah, because he was completely oblivious to you all. He had no idea you guys were there. He was just walking in one direction, hoping to find you guys. And yeah, it was basically a blind shot to the back of the head. And I think Dean rolled a pretty high number. And it was, if I had decided to go that route, he would have shot that guy in the head, definitely. But I didn't want to have that little sidetracking of that go on. So I had the GM intrusion of him the rest of his suit compiled together, and he flew off.
That was actually handled really well.
Yeah, it really was.
Because it made a ton of sense.
Yeah,
it's like you're gonna give me a incompetent brother. I'm gonna murk him.
But I was hoping that down the line I could have had him come back as a GM intrusion and invade the the sewer with you guys, but that ended up not happening. My time was spent up at that point. Um, but it is what it is. GM Roulette doesn't always have nice little ends to each plot line, and that's kind of
Mm.
the fun of it. So then the guys went down into the sewers, which is where what is it? Maggot's base was, where she had fled to, and I tried to wanted to give them like a little, obstacle to bypass, which was the big metal door that had a lock on it or whatever have you. And they could have gone about, tackling that in many different ways. They could have hacked try to figure out the codes or whatever have you. But they just went straight with Bennett's brute force strength and tore it off the walls, which again it makes perfect sense because she's a destroyer and she breaks stuff. Um, but then right behind that wall was someone who was anticipating them because Maggot obviously knew that you guys were going to chase her down. So she had that first line of defense and that powered armored person. You guys didn't know if it was a robot or an actual person.
And she dropped Bennett.
And as soon as as soon as you guys decided to attack this guy, you hit him pretty hard. I think it was Bennett who landed the first blow, punch in the chest. You actually saw that it was a person inside there. It wasn't just a robot. It was a human being that you guys were pummeling and killing. And
George? Was
yeah.
it
The person sprung a leak.
I forget the guy's name. I don't see it in my notes here. But the guy ended up dying, and I believe it was Anthony who interjected that. What is it? I forget which character you were playing at that point.
I was Bennett.
Yeah, and you were like, "Oh my God, I got invited to his son's bar mitzvah next week. I can't like you were like all reeling about what you had just done." And I feel like that was super funny, and yeah, and by that time I knew my time was cutting a little bit short, so I wanted to lead to where I would assume the finale would happen, and the characters are faced with a long hallway, and I figured a good way to have some kind of action or suspense or whatever in a long hallway to the next you would assume is the control room because you could see like lights in that room was to have some kind of trap, and they discovered the trap. I forget. I believe what is it? Steven used a GM, like not a GM, a player intrusion or something to say that he had knowledge of the hallway. I forget who it was, quite honestly.
Yeah, it was me.
And then he was like, "Oh, I know that there's a trap right there, or whatever have you." So, funny enough, Anthony as Bennett had the great idea to say, "Hey, I'm gonna throw this body onto the trap, and spring it, and then we'll be safe." But no, unfortunately, he rolled a 1, and he fumbled into the trap, and he got shot up, and he actually got down one, thing in the damage track, and that was
I
actually
almost went down 2. I had like 2 speed points left or some weird number like
yeah.
that. It
The
was really
trap,
low.
the
I
trap was
trusted you with my
basically.
character. Man.
It was 2 heavy machine guns that came from the ceiling, and of course, 2 heavy machine guns are gonna do a lot of damage. So they ended up doing I think I gave them 10 damage,
Yeah.
and they brought you down so much, and then that was actually the end of my scene there. So I think I set it up pretty well where you guys are gonna have to recover from what you guys just did to then proceed to see what was waiting for you in the other room, and that's where Dean took over.
Yeah. And so how everything was going with all the craziness in the hallway and our botched rolls at that time.
Yeah, I was rolling horrible.
Then it just was getting just messed up. It was crazy. And there was a force field up, and basically what I figured to do was to try to tie it up was somehow bring everything full circle, since Dr. Destroyer was trying to basically frame us for, making him look bad the last time, I think it was my character who had somehow given out his information or something.
His Netflix passcode.
So he wasn't too happy. So the idea was, Dr. Destroyer is this enigmatic foe. Nobody's ever really seen it. We didn't set parameters, so I just kind of took it and ran with it and created, a big bad, which was basically the Dr. Destroyer dreadnought simulacrum that he would function through. And Steven came up with very interesting ways to use his car as a weapon, because
Using Crazy Rider's ghost vehicle as a weapon from far away.
I was eased at using it as a weapon, so.
So he was dropping his car on things, and that would have like, and I think we even talked about it. I even talked about it to somebody on the server because they were asking about things being overpowered or GM intrusions and how best to use them. And so that's what I did. I used a GM intrusion because Crazy Rider decided to drop the car on the dreadnought, and you know could
Yeah,
have
he
ended
dropped it on Maggot.
No, he
It
yeah,
was on
it was
Maggot
on Maggot. Yeah,
first. He dropped
twice.
it on Maggot and turned Maggot into paste.
twice,
Yeah, twice.
twice.
That was the selfie. Remember that was the
Right.
selfie.
He turned Maggot into paste. So then of course, it came full circle. He decided to drop it on the dreadnought, and that would have not been like a lot of fun because like 3 or 4 drops and it would have been over. So I had the dreadnought turn burst into like a horde creature, and it was like these his arms actually had these 4 arms, and remember the arms like shot off and became scorpion tail,
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
mm-hmm. And so of course the battle was raging on. The heroes, or should I say the villains who were the stars of the story, were basically holding their own, but time was running out, and I had to think of a quick way to encapsulate the whole thing. So of course I did offer another GM intrusion, and we turned the reporter who was from Villains Elite,
Mr.
Manley. Yeah, Mr.
Mr.
Manley.
Mhm.
Mr. Manley. I actually turned Mr. Manley into a recruiter for the True Villains Elite, which was a villain recruiting group, basically opposed to Dr. Destroyer's whole methodology. So, them knowing that Dr. Destroyer holds grudges and yada, 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 figured that it would have been one of those type deals. So I had to figure a way to wrap it up and bring everything full circle. So if we ever visit these characters again, they could actually be in a campaign, members of the Villains Elite now, and which is like my envisioning is a mercenary group, that hires villains out. And that was kind of, the jaunt across the superhero game, which was kind of wild. I do have to apologize to everybody because I was like dead tired. I had worked 5 days in a row, 12-hour days. I was wiped, so I wasn't at my best. So I do think we could have probably had a more cohesive story, but I was like half asleep at one point.
Well, with that said, though, that ending was fantastic. I can hear myself on Timon's mic. I think it's you, Dean. But
Again,
no, it's okay. I actually went away. But either way, the way you ended it, honestly, when we were running, towards the end of the game, and we knew there was only like 2 minutes left or whatever have you, I was thinking to myself like, how the hell is he gonna end this in a way that's gonna feel like satisfying? And I feel like that was a really good way to do it. Like turned out to be a whole test for everybody, and that actually went out really well.
I mean, that leads into my next question, which is actually perfect. I think that due to the nature of GM Roulette, it's never, the onus on the story is never on one person, so no one could really like take the blame if something gets stiff, because it's a group effort. Everyone is building to that stage, but that it'll lead into my next question is, what would you have done differently in hindsight now that we finished the game on your end and your section of the story? And since I was first, I guess I'll go first again. But I think like in the first game, I was so concerned with, hey, I didn't get in the characters into any action. And in this one, I think I should have maybe explained what you call a Dr. Destroyer a little better in the beginning and spent another 5 minutes building that villain narrative to give you guys more of a sense of what Dr. Destroyer was. And it would have made it a little easier on the people behind me. But I really wanted to say, hey, I got to get to action as quick as possible. I got to move it as quick as possible. And in hindsight, I probably could have spent another 5 minutes on the narrative, from my perspective anyway.
I would say yes and no. I mean, in one respect, I kind of like that you left Dr. Destroyer vague.
Mm.
It gave me something to work with, you know. But had you fleshed him out more, that wouldn't have been an issue either. I don't think your approach was wrong in any way or lacked.
Mm.
I mean, to me, it reminded me of, like, you know, the way superhero movies and stuff are today. You open up with a bang.
Yeah.
You know?
That's what I was
thought your
trying to
opening
go
was
for.
great because the villain in the shadows, like not knowing about him, doesn't let somebody who comes after you have to worry about fitting him in the right way. They
Right.
can fit it in their own way.
In my mind, I was picturing like the Inspector Gadget video where you only see the hand.
Claw.
Yeah.
Danger Mouse.
Yes.
So, Steven, you went. What would you have done differently if you?
I think I kind of mentioned it earlier. I think that I thought the chase scene was great, but I think I would have cut a couple minutes off of it. Would probably be it. Maybe I just felt like I went a little bit long on it, possibly because I was trying to make it feel like a chase scene. I guess is what the end of it was. But other than that, I think the rest of it went well. I just know my goal in the beginning was I didn't want to keep us in the bank for the whole time. So I wanted to find a way to get everybody out the bank, and I think that kind of worked.
Yeah.
Minus one revolving door. Yeah, so I can't think of anything else that I would have improved other than that. It probably would have been because if I had that, we would have probably gotten to the end of the Iron Man brother within my time frame, and so he wouldn't have been kind of that loose end at the end that I believe he was. But I look at it, and all superhero stories have keep enough loose ends in order to have more stories go. Yeah. But then again, GM Roulette is a one-stop shop. It's got a beginning, middle, and end, and everything usually gets wrapped up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so I got some I hate's a strong word, but some like and dislike in that same area, kind of neutral on it. How about you, Al?
All right, so for me, I feel like I didn't add too much to the story when it was my turn. It was more like just progressing you guys. Like I didn't feel like it was anything, again, too cool or whatever have you added. Like I had some cool action scenes, but it wasn't really too much of a story impact there, if that makes sense. So something I was thinking about was, again, I mentioned it earlier in the video, was having that Iron Man guy come back. And I feel like if I thought about it a little bit better, towards the end of that fight with that big metal guy that you guys killed, who had the son of the bar mitzvah, I could have possibly added another GM intrusion where he burst through the sewer, and is now accosting you guys, and now you got to deal with him and see how you're going to progress from there, and that would have added a cool little story element. But again, I was more focused on the time and progressing forward than adding more elements to the story because I was third and I knew that the end was coming. But I feel like, again, that would have added something cool to push you guys towards the end because now you guys got to deal with this guy. Either he's going to help you guys or you're going to fight him or whatever have you. It would have been up to, the next three guys because Dean would have taken over at that point. But
that
again,
timer will really make a difference.
Yeah, it really does. And so instead of going that route, I just, again, pushed you guys forward with the traps and whatever have you. But I feel like if it would have been a little bit cooler to have the guy we keep calling, I forget what his real name was.
Captain something.
He was captain.
Yeah, it was Captain something.
But I'm looking at my notes. Oh, Captain Blast. Captain Blast. Yeah. It would have been cool if Captain Blast just kind of burst through the sewers and, that was the end of my scene. But again, I feel like that would have overcomplicated things for Dean's part. But, you live and learn.
So, wasn't that the whole villains, heroes have no privates because everything had captain in it?
Yes. Oh, so Dean, what about you?
I don't, you know what? Honestly, I think I just would have probably wished I was more well rested because I was kind of all over the place in what to do, Um, and I think my saving grace is the fact that I read so many damn comic books. You know, I really think that was my saving grace. But probably if I could have done anything, to change it, maybe if, instead of ending it like cut and dry, but to end it with a cliffhanger. You know,
That's a
um,
good idea.
just and again, these are things that I think GM Roulette can address in so many ways. Um, of course, we're doing it with the minimalistic 30-minute idea. But when the rules come out, you should have in there, hey, you can set your own time limits. If you want to have a good 4-hour session, hey, every GM gets an hour, or push it up to 45 minutes or whatever, just for some variance in whatever it is you're going to do. And it's not limited by 4 GMs. It's however many GMs you want at the table that night. So I'm just learning. I'm just learning, like, for me, that it's like the scope of what GM Roulette is capable of. And I think the biggest thing for me is just let's keep doing GM Roulette, because I think it makes us all better.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we all kind of just learn. We kind of live and learn, new techniques, new aspects, and we get to see, aspects of our colleagues as well. And it's kind of cool because everybody has a different style and a different flavor that they bring to the table. But as we're showing people, it works.
I think the whole idea of our recaps isn't even a negative, because as GMs, we're going to naturally harp on what we think we could have did better. And if you don't want to improve as a GM, then you're probably in the wrong business and game anyway. Because I don't know one GM that doesn't run a session and not look at ways to improve upon it, because that's just what we do. That's part of our DNA. You know what I mean? So I think the way that GM Roulette is set up, it's so helpful and beneficiary for anyone, whether you're an experienced GM or a new GM, because you could take something out of every session of GM Roulette, not only by what you did in your 30 minutes or your hour. Is like, I learned something from what Steven did, I learned something from what Dean did.
Right.
And I truly think that this is a special way of running games. It's and it's fun to do, which is the most important thing. It's hella fun.
It's ridiculously fun. And I mean, I know you keep getting the number one slot, Anthony, but I'm telling you, the more I think about it, the more I kind of want to hopefully get the number one slot eventually, because being number one, you kind of set the stage. You set the tone, and the thing about it was you set the tone. You didn't set it where we were these hardened, gritty, nasty villains. We were like the new guys on the block. We made mistakes. We were kind of, we weren't goofy, but we weren't,
we were second string.
We weren't Deathstroke the Terminator. So it was kind of cool. And then Al, you said you felt like you didn't add anything to the story, but you know what? You have a really nice talent. You always give us props.
Mm.
You always give good props, no matter what it is. In the first adventure we did, the fairy tale, you added in, the ghost, the spirit of the forest, and giving us the heart of the forest being a focal point. These were all like little elements that could come together to put stuff together. So like in this one, you added the power armor, and then the stem packs that were on the armor, and all that kind of stuff that we were able to use to beef up Mr. Manning, not knowing that Mr. Manning was actually a recruiter for a villain group and the whole thing. So it was like little props. It was almost like ways to you give ways to drive the story. So you always are adding. Steven, the car chase, even though it took up the majority of your 30 minutes, there's something else. Everybody should know that was really that was a cool section.
Yeah, it was fun.
You handled the car chase. You handled that the car chase sequence. You handled it great. I was sitting there visualizing, watching it on TV or doing the page turns, and you see the big. I saw big splash pages, especially the ones when we pulled the car around and Steel Wolf, jumps up with the flechette gun, and it was like I could see it. So I think everybody, at this group always brings something special.
I think what Steven did was he brought in Mr. Manley, and
yes,
to be honest, Mr. Manley kind of drove the narrative.
Yeah,
He wasn't the main character, but he was the focal point really of this story, if you really think about it.
Yeah.
And he brought Mr. Manley into the story, which was super cool.
I think he was interacting with
everyone.
in everyone except for yours because he wasn't in yet.
Yeah.
But everybody interacted with him, I think, in every 30-minute block.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. I think Mr. Manley he kind of drove the narrative going forward from the minute he was introduced. And all the memorable moments had something to do with Mr. Manley. Like even if we really think about it, the selfie, which I think was like a memorable moment. We dragged Mr. Manley into it. The all the jokes that landed, like the ones that were actually funny upon replay were directed at Mr. Manley, which made it a joke. You know what I mean? So I think Mr. Manley was probably the most important part of the story. He was the main focal point.
Awesome.
Good stuff.
Speaking of which, like we did in the last video, what was your favorite part?
We're gonna go into order.
Smash and maggot.
Steven, go.
100%. That car. That was. I mean, first I hit her, and then what was it? I think I had like a 20 on my initiative. I was like, well, my first action, I dismissed the car, and then I dropped it again on my first action.
That was abusive.
Crazy Rider was a cool character too. I liked.
Yeah, that character sentence was a lot of fun. Drives Like a Maniac is easily one of my favorite foci in all the foci.
But really, I don't think I would have had that dropping ability if not for Al in the very beginning asking, "Can I just dismiss and summon my car at will or motorcycle?"
It was like a ghost vehicle.
Yeah.
But that's the beauty of yes and at its finest.
Mm-hmm.
An inexperienced GM would be scared to give someone something that isn't in the rule book, but we don't play that way. It's about telling a fun story together. So I don't understand. It's yes and yes, you absolutely can have it, and you can have a side card too.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that's the kind of stuff that I think was cool for me. I think the coolest part was actually Al's GM intrusion making me miss shooting Captain Blast. It was just pretty cool because I was gonna murk him. I really was. I don't know why, but I felt the need to get rid of the older sibling who had inferior equipment, and become the full cyborg.
Poor Captain Blast.
Yeah, you just like made the armor come in, so my flechettes went tink. He didn't hear it.
Didn't even notice and flew off.
Flies off. That was pretty cool.
Easily. If Anthony wants to go, no.
My favorite part. I had two, but one I liked the scene where Dean flipped over into Crazy Riders while you're in the bank.
Or hitting the wolf,
the two German shepherds.
Yeah.
And at the same time, Maggot, who made her roll on a 19, flipped into the vault.
Yeah.
Hole. I thought that was pretty cool. I like that scene.
A very bullet time moment.
Yeah. And it was everything happening simultaneously. And I like, even though I got dropped, but I like that whole, when Bennett, Bennett through the body and then got shot and dropped down the damage track because everything can't be perfect. I like when when we drop and we show that, hey, you got to take the recovery rolls. It's still, even though it's GM Roulette, even though it's a one shot, there's still opportunity for player death or for hardship to happen. Like it can't always be perfect. So I appreciated that. Even though it happened to me, I appreciated that. It was it was capable of happening. So.
Mm-hmm.
I think those were my favorite parts.
You definitely can't enter a villain's lair without expecting some craziness to go down. And for me, I think I mentioned it earlier, but my favorite, or at least I said I liked it, but the car chase was easily my favorite part of the whole thing. Like, just again, I was playing Crazy Rider, so I was not the main focal point, but I was the one driving there. But just being able to, the way Steven described, like what Dina said, the way Steven described everything, I was able to actually picture it all, and that was awesome. And then the way he handled I honestly forget what Cypher was throwing. I think it was a flashbang.
Yeah.
And then the flashbang malfunctioned and caused the car explosion, and yeah, it was awesome. I really enjoyed the whole chase scene was amazing.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, it was.
It was fun.
GM Roulette is GM Roulette. You get a different experience every time. I think we've played two really different styles of games, from fairy tales to supers, and we had two different, even though they both didn't end the same or both had the same experience, I think they were both enjoyable in their own right. And hopefully the next time we run it, we'll get something different. And hopefully I'll get to go something other than first.
I'm calling it now. The next one is gonna be Wild West. Just like I like to predict the supers and the fairy tale. Next one's gonna be Wild
I
West.
think we all should name a genre to see what it is. I want spy
Wild.
thriller.
Well, it's Wild/Weird West. Remember
Yes,
that.
Wild Weird West. Yes,
So,
that's what I'm calling for.
personally, you talk about that, but honestly, I would not be too upset if we got modern fantasy.
So
What would you like to see, Steven?
I mean, I said spy thriller.
That's
is
what I heard.
want.
Yeah.
Modern intrigue. Okay, cool. Anthony?
I kind of want to see modern intrigue, but I wouldn't mind doing Wild West either. I think Wild West would be interesting. But to be honest, I don't care what it is, as long as I don't go first.
You got your
It's
dice to
fun.
blame for that.
Yeah, it's fun, but I want to either end it or I want to be third or fourth somewhere.
Stop
Well,
using.
here, I want to throw this out there. I want the spy thriller with Al being first, because I know
Oh
he's going
my-
to come up with the wackiest
Yeah,
gadget that we all have to accomplish our mission.
Because Bill, that's probably
It's
like
all
one of
the
my
props, man. Like Dean was saying, it's the props you bring in.
yeah. I think that's probably my least well versed genre, probably. But so I think that would be fun to try anyway.
So all you need to do is go and watch the Bourne Supremacy and a couple of James Bond movies, and you'll be awesome.
Movies I have not seen.
You've never seen a James Bond movie, Al?
Not that I can. I think I've seen one of the newer
Have
ones.
you played GoldenEye?
I played GoldenEye, yes, but only multiplayer, so I don't know the story.
Okay, we just turned GM Roulette into confession.
But no, so Al, just go watch Casino Royale or.
I think that's the one I've seen. It's one of the newer ones with I forget the actor's name, that
Daniel
blonde
Craig.
hair guy. Yeah, that guy.
That's good. That's
But I don't remember it.
Roger Moore is my James Bond.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I love Roger Moore.
I hate Roger Moore.
I loved him in The Saint as well. Remember
I
that?
hated Roger Moore. Was the stiffest, most unconvincing Gorgo Morgus. I hated him.
Connery and Daniel Craig for me.
Yes.
Oh no,
John Connery, number one. Daniel Craig, number two. Pierce Brosnan wasn't bad, but
Every time I looked at Pierce Brosnan, I thought of Remington Steele.
I know.
He just wasn't James Bond for me.
Actually, his James Bond had a little bit of edge. All right. Well, guys, I think that should be the good ending for the wrap up, because we're going all over the place.
we're already hypothesizing about the next one.
GM Roulette has turned into hypothesis.
Oh, I want to say this though. I miss adding stuff into the story. So Roger Moore is the next. Roger Moore as James Bond is what I want someone to add into the story, no matter what
What? No
genre
one,
it
no
is.
matter what genre, there's gonna be some spy guy named Roger Moore.
Yeah,
Not even James. It's gonna be his real name, Roger Moore.
yeah.
No, no.
But yeah, thank you all for watching our recap. It was definitely fun going over what we liked, what we could have done better. It always helps us improve for the next time, and hopefully that next time will be in the near future. So yeah, don't be sure to like, share, subscribe. Check out the description below, for a little more details. And yeah, from us at the CU, we will see you later.
Bye.
All right.